My very favorite movie is The Sound of Music. And with apologies to Oscar Hammerstein for changing the lyrics, here's my favorite things. Praise songs and hymn tunes and lunches with good friends, books from my childhood and tales that have no end, Muppets named Kermit and songs on their wings. These are a few of my favorite things. Songs from the 30s and 40s and later, songs that remind me how love makes life greater, songs that cajole me and music that swings. These are a few of my favorite things. The Ark of the Covenant bore the 2 tablets. David decided he'd form some new habits. His joy was so great that he danced like a king. These are a few of my favorite things. When the dog bites, when the bee stings, when I'm feeling sad, I simply remember my favorite things, and then I don't feel so bad. I first heard this praise song at the memorial service for a dear friend in January, and immediately fell in love with "He Will Hold Me Fast." children's books is The Bear That Wasn't. I enjoyed it as a child, and I especially enjoyed reading it to my kids and some of my grandkids, and here it is. Once upon a time, in fact, it was on a Tuesday, the bear stood at the edge of a great forest, and he gazed up at the sky, and away up high he saw a flock of geese flying south. Then he gazed up at the trees of the forest. The leaves had turned all yellow and brown and were falling from the branches. He knew when the geese flew south and the leaves fell from the trees that winter would soon be here and snow would cover the forest. It was time to go into a cave and hibernate. And that was just what he did. Not long afterward, in fact, it was on a Wednesday, men came, lots of men, with charts and maps and surveying instruments. They charted and mapped and surveyed all over the place. Then more men came, lots of men with steam shovels and saws and tractors and axes, and they steam shoveled and sawed and tractored all over the place. They worked and worked and worked, and finally they built a great, big, huge factory right over the top of the sleeping bear's cave. The factory operated all through the winter. And then it was spring. Deep down under the factory, the bear awoke. He blinked his eyes and yawned. Then he saw a light in the distance. "Oh, there's the entrance to the cave," he said, and yawned again. He walked up the stairs to the entrance and stepped out into the bright spring sunshine. His eyes were only half opened as he was still very sleepy. His eyes didn't stay half open for long. They suddenly popped wide apart. He looked straight ahead. Where was the forest? Where was the grass? Where were the trees? Where were the flowers? What had happened? Where was he? Things looked so strange. He didn't know where he was. But we do, don't we, boys and girls? We know that he was right in the middle of the very busy factory. "I must be dreaming," he said. "Of course, that's it. I'm dreaming." So he closed his eyes and pinched himself. Then he opened his eyes very slowly and looked about. The big buildings were still there. It wasn't a dream. It was real. Just then a man came out of the door. "Hey, you get back to work," the man said. "I'm the foreman and I'll report you for not working." The bear said, "I don't work here. I'm a bear." The foreman laughed very loud. "That's a fine excuse for a man to keep from doing any work, saying he's a bear." The bear said, "But I am a bear." The foreman stopped laughing. He was very mad. "Don't try to fool me," he said. "You're not a bear. You're a silly man who needs a shave and wears a fur coat. I'm going to take you to the general manager." The bear said, "No, you're mistaken. I am a bear." The general manager was very mad too. He said, "You're not a bear. You're a silly man who needs a shave and wears a fur coat, and I'm going to take you to the third vice president." The bear said, "I'm sorry to hear you say that. You see, I am a bear." So the bear saw the third vice president and the second vice president and the first vice president, and finally they took him to the president. "Listen," the bear told the president, "I don't work here. I'm a bear. And please don't say I'm a silly man who needs a shave and wears a fur coat, because the first vice president and the second vice president, the third vice president, and the general manager and the foreman have told me that already." "Well, thank you for telling me," the president said. "I won't say it, but that's just what I think you are." The bear said, "I'm a bear." The president smiled and said, "You can't be a bear. Bears are only in a zoo or a circus. They're never inside a factory, and that's where you are, inside a factory. So how can you be a bear?" The bear said, "But I am a bear." The president said, "Not only are you a silly man who needs a shave and wears a fur coat, but you're also very stubborn. So I'm going to prove to you once and for all that you are not a bear." The bear said, "But I am a bear." So they all got into the president's car and drove to the zoo. And here's the zoo. But the zoo bear said if he was a bear, he'd be in here with us. A baby bear said, I know what he is. He's a silly man who needs a shave and wears a fur coat. And all the zoo bears laughed. Then they drove 600 miles to the nearest circus. Is he a bear? The president asked the circus bears. The circus bear said, no, he isn't a bear, because if he were a bear, he wouldn't be sitting in a grandstand seat with you. He would be wearing a little hat with a striped ribbon on it, holding onto a balloon and riding a bicycle with us. The bear said, but I am a bear. One little baby circus bear said, I know what he is. He's a silly man who needs a shave and wears a fur coat. And all the circus bears almost fell off their bicycles laughing. The bear said, but I am a bear. They left the circus and drove back to the factory. And so they put the bear to work on a big machine with a lot of other men. The bear worked on the big machine for many, many months. One day, a long time afterward, the factory closed down, and all the workers left and went home. The bear walked along behind them. He was all alone and had no place to go. As he walked along, he happened to gaze up at the sky, and away up high, he saw a flock of geese flying south. Then the bear gazed up at the trees. The leaves had turned all yellow and brown and were falling from the branches. The bear knew when the geese flew south and the leaves fell from the trees that winter would soon be here and snow would cover the forest. It was time to go into a cave and hibernate. So he walked over to a huge tree that had a cave hollowed out underneath it, and he was just about to go into it when he stopped and said, but I can't go into a cave and hibernate. I'm not a bear. I'm a silly man who needs a shave and wears a fur coat. So winter came. The snow fell. It covered the forest and it covered him. He sat there shivering with cold and he said, but I sure wish I was a bear. The longer he sat there, the colder he became. His toes were freezing, his ears were freezing, his teeth were chattering, and icicles covered his nose and chin. He'd been told so often that he was a silly man who needed a shave and wore a fur coat that he felt it must be true. So he just sat there because he didn't know what a silly man who needed a shave and wore a fur coat would do if he were freezing to death in the snow. The poor bear was very lonely and very sad, and he didn't know what to think. Then suddenly, he got up and walked through the deep snow toward the cave. Inside it was cozy and snug. The icy wind and cold, cold snow couldn't reach him here. He felt warm all over. He sank down on a bed of pine boughs, and soon he was happily asleep and dreaming sweet dreams, just like all bears do when they hibernate. So even though the foreman and the general manager and the third vice president and the second vice president and the first vice president and the president and the zoo bears and the circus bears had said he was a silly man who needed to shave and wore a fur coat, I don't think he really believed it. Do you? No, indeed. He knew he wasn't a silly man, and he wasn't a silly bear either. You may remember Kermit, the green frog Muppet from Sesame Street many years ago. In some ways, he was kind of like this bear. He sang a song about the difficulties of being different from everyone else. It's called Being Green. It's not that easy being green, having to spend each day the color of the leaves. When I think it could be nicer, being red or yellow or gold, or something much more colorful like that. It's not easy to pass you over, but you're not standing out like flashy sparkles in the water or stars in the sky. But green is the color of spring, and green can be cool and friendly like, and green can be big like an ocean or important like a mountain or tall like a tree. When green is all there is to be, it could make you wonder why, but why wonder, why wonder? I am green and it'll do fine. It's beautiful and I think it's what I want to be. Songs from Disney movies. From Toy Story, we have You've Got a Friend in Me, and from Cars, we'll hear Our Town. Both songs were written by one of my favorite composers and singers, Randy Newman. This one is You've Got a Friend in Me. You've got a friend in me. You've got a friend in me. When the road looks rough ahead, you're miles and miles from your nice warm bed. You just remember what your old pal said, friend, you've got a friend in me. Yeah, you've got a friend in me. Now some folks might be a little bit smarter than I am, bigger and stronger too, maybe, but none of them will ever love you the way I do. Just me and you, boy. And as the years go by, our friendship will never die. You're gonna see it's our destiny. You've got a friend in me. Yeah, you've got a friend in me. You've got a friend in me. as they've done before. 50s, as I entered my teens, I had an AM radio on the headboard of my bed, and I used to lie there listening to Lucky Logger Dance Time at 10 p.m. every night. They always played the most popular songs of the day, especially among us teenagers, or in my case, preteens at that time, I guess. Here's one that dates back to the 30s by Cole Porter, called In the Still of the Night. In the still of the night, as I gaze from my window at the moon in its flight, my thoughts all stray to you. In the still of the night, while the world is in slumber, all the times without number, darling, when I say to you, do you love me as I love you? Are you my life to me, my dream come true? Oh, will this dream of mine fade on the side, like the moon growing dim on the rim of a hill, in the still chill of the night? Moving up to the 40s is a song made popular by Frank Sinatra called Time After Time. I'm sorry you don't get Frank Sinatra tonight. You gotta be stuck with me. Time after time, I tell myself that I'm so lucky to be loving you, so lucky to be the one you run to see in the evening when the day is through. I only know what I know. The passing years will show. You've kept my love so young, so new. Time after time, you'll hear me sing that I'm so lucky to be loving you. Jumping forward to the 70s, one of my most favorite love songs, written by and sung by David Gates, is called If, though I actually prefer the version sung by Perry Como. If a picture paints 1,000 words, then why you I've come to know. If a face could launch 1,000 ships, then where am I to go? There's no one here home but you. You're all that's left me to do. When my love for life is running dry, you come and pour yourself on me. If a man could be two places at one time, I'd be with you. Tomorrow and today, beside you all the way. If the world would stop revolving, spinning slowly down to night, I'd spend the end with you. When the world was through, then one by one the stars would all go out, and you and I would simply fly away. Love, of course, has always been a popular theme, and in the 80s, Andrew Lloyd Webber wrote this one, Love Changes Everything. Love changes everything, hands and faces, earth and sky. Love changes everything, how you live and how you die. Love can make the summer fly, or a night seem like a lifetime. Yes, love changes everything. Now I tremble at your name. Nothing in the world will ever be the same. Off into the world we go, planning futures, shaping years. Love bursts in and suddenly all our wisdom disappears. Love makes fools of everyone, all the rules we make are broken. Yes, love changes everything, live or perish in its flame. Love will never, never let you be the same. Love will never, never let you be the same. This one is the story of Kilimikobi, told to me by my grandfather, Paul Jordan Smith, in his study sometime in the late 1940s. Here he is telling the story to my mother and her siblings many years earlier. My mother is the girl in the middle with the big black bow. I'm in the way for some people here, sorry about that. Grandfather told us kids that the story had been passed down for over 200 years orally by his ancestors. And here it is. Once upon a time, there was a little boy named Kilimikobi whose father and mother were called to go into a far country where they felt it might not be safe for a little boy. They decided to leave him in the keeping of an old woman. The old woman took Killamee to the cabin of her brother deep in the forest beyond the hills. She told Killamee he would have dogs to play with and could go fishing. As they reached the little old cabin, many dogs set up barking. And here they are. "That's Yellow Dog," she said, pointing. "Come, Yellow Dog." But Yellow Dog just sat on his haunches. "What are the names of the others?" Killamee asked. "Well, why, there's that tall, pointed-nosed shepherd. He's High John. The greyhound is Kyadlam. Pole is that brown terrier. The mastiff there is Yodai. And the little one is Bound." "What funny names," said Killamee. "My brother is a funny fellow," she replied. In fact, her brother was about the worst man you could find anywhere. Killamee called out, "Here, Bound, here, boy." And to the amazement of the old woman, Bound came wiggling forward, wagging his tail. Just then, from behind the cabin, a tall, dark-looking man appeared with an axe on his shoulder. Killamee saw that his eyes were shifty. Among the few hardy folk who dwelt in the forest, he was called the Wild Man because of his strange songs and fierce temper. And now his eyes were fixed on the signet ring Killamee's mother had given him on his most recent birthday. And I don't know if that's the signet ring or not, but that's the best picture I could find of it. By the way, grandfather never had any pictures to go with this, so you should be using your imaginations and I shouldn't be prompting you with these pictures. But anyway, so here we got what the pictures are. By the time he was called to wash up for supper, Killamee had made friends with Kyadlam too. And by the time the week was up, he had made friends with all the dogs. Even fierce Yellow Dog would follow him wherever he went. The Wild Man kept the dogs for his hunting, but he barely gave them enough to eat, often giving them a kick rather than a pat on the head. But Killamee tossed them tidbits from the table and taught them tricks. And he made up this song. Yellow Dog, High John, Kyadlam, Pole and Bound in Yodai. And whenever he called, they came on eager flying feet. But as time went by with no word from Killamee's parents, the old woman's wicked brother began to persuade her that they would never return, and he often gazed upon Killamee's fine old signet ring, which he thought would be worth a great fortune. And the old woman was weak, so at last she consented to do away with the little boy. One night after the old woman thought him sound asleep, Killamee heard them plotting. "Tomorrow you can put a snake fang in the apple dumpling he loves. That'll settle him," the Wild Man whispered. But Killamee resolved to be careful. After supper the next day, the old woman fetched his dumpling. When he was alone, Killamee quickly found a long, sharp serpent's tooth in the dumpling and threw it in the fireplace. Then he ate the dumpling as if nothing had happened. Upon discovering that Killamee was fine, the old woman ground her teeth in rage. Killamee kept his wits about him in his bed and strained his ears to hear what they were plotting. And when they thought he was asleep, their anger grew and they spoke loudly, arguing about why their plot had failed. The Wild Man said, "I'll fix him myself. I'll take him into the woods tomorrow." Killamee was terrified, but thought to himself, "Whatever happens, the dogs will save me." The next morning, when the old woman waked Killamee, she said, "I've got a nice breakfast ready for you, and that good brother of mine is going to take you out with him to cut down a honey tree." "What is a honey tree?" asked Killamee. "That's where the wild bees store their honey." Killamee knew if he went alone into the forest with the Wild Man, he'd never come back alive. So he said, "I'll call the dogs so they can go too." "Oh, those good-for-nothing hounds will run off in the woods chasing an old fox," said the Wild Man. Killamee knew the Wild Man was not telling the truth, for he could hear the dogs whining in the woodshed where the Wild Man had locked them in. Killamee's heart sank. What could he do now? He knew he must not go far into the forest without the dogs to protect him. The Wild Man made Killamee walk ahead of him on the forest trail that led up a hill. When he got to the top, Killamee saw the trail took a sharp turn. Below was a small clearing in a thicket of brush. Killamee plunged down into the brush just as the wild man reached the top and with a loud cry followed. Killamee was running for his life, but he knew he couldn't keep ahead of the wild man for long. The wicked man sang, "Killamee, Killamee, Kobe, I'll get you by and by. Killamee, Killamee, Kobe, I'll get you by and by." Ahead of Killamee was the tallest tree he'd ever seen, and from it was hanging a slender vine. Up the vine Killamee went, hand over hand, until he reached the first great limb. He called out at the top of his voice, Yellow dog, hi John, Kiadlam, pole and bound, and Yodai." The wild man grabbed the vine and began to climb, but he hadn't gotten 10 feet up before the vine broke, dropping him heavily to the ground with an angry curse. Killamee saw that the wild man seemed to be spitting on his hands. He picked up his axe and swung mightily at the tree. Wham, whack, wham, whack. Great chips flew and the tall tree trembled. "Killamee, Killamee, Kobe," sang the wild man. Meanwhile, up above, growing more frightened by the moment, Killamee shouted, Yellow dog, hi John, Kiadlam, pole and bound, and Yodai." Back in the woodshed, the dogs had heard Killamee's first shrill cry. They began barking furiously. Pole, the terrier, found a damp spot where the earth floor was soft and began to dig deep with his sharp paws. The wild man paused for breath and went around to the other side of the tree. His task was half done, and the slightest breeze made the tree sway. His axe bit deeper and deeper into the shuddering tree. Wham! Whack! A few more strokes, and that would be the end of the big tree and the little boy, he thought. In the woodshed, all the dogs were now digging, and they broke through a small hole. Yellow Dog shoved the others aside, and with his mighty paws at work, the hole grew larger and larger. Bound scrambled between the large dog's legs and through the hole, followed by Pole. The two smaller dogs began enlarging the hole from the outside, and while Yellow Dog continued the job from inside. Yellow Dog's patience was at an end. He forced his way through the hole. Then with an angry growl, he was off to the forest with all the other dogs at his heels in a mighty chorus. The wild man had not heard the dogs, for his axe was going faster and faster. Wham! Whack! But just then Yellow Dog and Kiadlam burst through the thicket, and before the wild man knew what was happening, Kiadlam had ripped off his shirt, and Yellow Dog had torn off his pants. Yodai's jaws clamped on a shoe and wouldn't let go. Pole's sharp bark urged the larger dogs on, while little Bound danced about with delight. The wild man had had enough. With loud cries and curses, he tore himself free of the dogs, and lacking one shoe and all his clothes, he dashed into the forest, and from that day to this, no one has ever heard of him since. The old woman had been astonished when the dogs burst out of the woodshed, and with many ohs and ahs and shaking of her head, she scampered up the hill after them. Long before she reached the top, she heard the wild man's screams and the barks of triumph. So she turned about and ran as fast as she could back down the mountain. When she reached the bottom, she was going so fast she couldn't stop until she plunged right into the middle of the swift stream, which carried her bobbing like a cork and howling until she was clean out to the ocean, where she may be bobbing to this day. Killamee lost no time in dropping out of the tree onto a bed of soft pine needles, only to be surrounded by his tail-wagging four-legged friends. Now he just wanted to go home, but the only way he knew was the forest path along which the old woman had brought him. So he and the dogs set forth past the old cabin. They marched on until they heard horses' hoofs, and around the next turn there came father and mother on their big horses. Killamee told them all his adventures and how these dogs had saved him from the wild man and his wicked sister. His father promised him that these wonderful dogs would always have a home, warm rugs, and plenty of bones. So the little boy, along with Yellow Dog, Hi John, Kiadlam, Pole, and Bound, and Yodai, all marched home, where they lived happily ever after. My final number for today is a praise song, in this case also an echo song, meaning I sing a line and everyone else echoes back the same line. I'd like to ask you all to join in, help me out, at least with the echoes. Pat Rossler and my two daughters will now come forward, if they would please, and they will help me teach the song to you. The words are in your program. One of my favorite Bible stories is about King David bringing the Ark of the Covenant up to Jerusalem. The Bible tells us that David was so filled with joy that he danced before the Lord with all his might. And afterwards he composed a song in thanksgiving, which is found in 1 Chronicles chapter 16, and again in Psalm 96. Here's what the ark is thought to have looked like. The ark was built under Moses' guidance in the desert after the nation of Israel escaped from Egypt. It was constructed of acacia wood and covered with pure gold. The ark contained the 2 stone tablets which bore the 10 Commandments. And after King Solomon built the first temple, the ark was placed in the Holy of Holies. As a warm-up for the hymn sing, which is the last thing on today's program, these ladies and I would like to sing this echo version of Psalm 96 once through, and then we'll ask you to join the ladies as we sing it through a second time. Now, imagine yourself bringing the Ark of the Covenant up to Jerusalem for the first time, and try to be as joyful as David must have been. And in your mind's eye, dance before the Lord with all your might. But please, just in your mind's eye. Sing to the Lord a new song. Sing to the Lord all the earth. Sing to the Lord, praise His name. Sing to the Lord, praise His name. Proclaim salvation day after day. Sing to the Lord a new. Sing to the Lord a new. Sing to the Lord a new song. Declare His glory among the nations, His marvelous deeds among all peoples. For great is the Lord and most worthy of praise. He is to be feared above all gods. For all the gods of the nations are idols, but the Lord made the heavens. The Lord made the heavens. Splendor and majesty are before Him. Strength and glory are in His sanctuary. Sing to the Lord a new song. Sing to the Lord a new song. Sing to the Lord all the earth. Sing to the Lord all the earth. Sing to the Lord, praise His name. Sing to the Lord, praise His name. Make His salvation day after day. Sing to the Lord a new. Sing to the Lord a new. Sing to the Lord a new song. Thanks, and now it's your turn. Please join in. Sing to the Lord a new song. Sing to the Lord a new song. To the Lord all the earth. Sing to the Lord all the earth. Sing to the Lord, praise His name. Sing to the Lord, praise His name. Make His salvation day after day. Sing to the Lord a new. Sing to the Lord a new. Sing to the Lord a new song. Declare His glory among the nations, His marvelous deeds among all peoples. For great is the Lord and most worthy of praise. He is to be feared above all gods. For all the gods of the nations are